gone forward. Is that good? Is that bad? I read a report somewhere that when the clocks go forward, 1 hour lack of sleep disturbs somebody's health across the world. Kevin, good morning to you. Kevin is one of our wonderful guests today joining us. How are
Good
you,
morning.
Kevin?
I'm very well, thank you.
Of course, those of you who don't know Kevin, you can Google him, Kevin Metzger, and you will see all his wonderful achievements in his journey of life career, Kevin.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Is that a good intro for you, Kevin? Or
That's good enough for me. Yeah.
you want me to jazz it up a little bit more?
No. That's fine. Absolutely fine.
That's right, because there's people out there always looking for a good man to represent them across the board.
Well, that's good. I mean, the most important thing is that, I've been practicing as a barrister in the UK for nearly 40 years now. And I've always said the minute I don't feel like I can give everything, I need to stop. I'm still working.
That's right, Kevin. It's a long journey. You've been through a lot of different scenarios across the board and done actually more than just being a barrister, haven't you?
That's correct.
Yeah, you've done a little bit of media, a little bit of broadcasting, and all sorts of things you have done in your career.
Yes, including sort of being involved in setting up a political party in a small West African country called Sierra Leone, which is where I hail from.
That's right. But now you also hold your British citizenships, Kevin, and you know, Kevin, what I know that this British citizenship can disappear in a flash. And
Well, yes, the problem is, I think that over time, there have been, what shall I say? It seems as if they've been tweaking the way in which people can become citizens and remain citizens. I think it's a little bit difficult for me for that to disappear in a flash for me because I was born in London, and at the time you had the right, if you were born in London of parents who were British, um, the automatic right to be British. It may not be the same anymore.
so we are in the midst of change, and this change is whether it's a positive one or a negative one, Kevin, is one man's opinion, isn't it? Right this moment, difficult times.
Change will always involve difference. And doing something different is uncomfortable for some people and more comfortable for others, but it is a new experience. In life, I think when there is a change about to happen, it's important to understand what that change is and to either embrace it or reject it, but to do so with all your convictions so that you can make it work for you as an individual.
So, Kevin, today what I'm going to discuss with you is
Mhm.
the issue of our parliament. Can they be can they be taken to court for some of the misdemeanors and some of the words that they speak, some of the incitement behavior, like you saw with Diane Abbott, and you saw one of the donors, he was out of order, and what can be done about that? And even for a minister to call the people stupid is an irresponsible comment. You know, Kevin, you would not like it if I called you stupid, would you?
No, but I'm sure that in my life there are a number of people who called me stupid. They're all still alive.
Yeah. And
I may have felt badly at the time. Yes, I understand the point you're making, and you see, it's very, I think, easy to take a standpoint and say that people who are in authority, for example, the politicians who are meant to represent the voters who put them there, they say things that you don't agree with because they're also individuals. Um, I think that there must be a little bit of give and take as far as that is concerned. But of course, whilst there is give and take, there will always be the occasion when people cross the line. It's identifying what that line is and then understanding what you can do about it. Because as you know, what people say in Parliament, Parliament has particular privileges. And generally, you are unable to do anything about what people say in Parliament because of that privilege. But if they say it in the media, if they say it out on the street, on a rally, and so on, there are different things that you can do, depending on what it is that you take offense with, or a group of people take offense with.
Of course, I'm also going to bring to attention those of you who have been following the media recently that one of the individuals, a Palestinian British national, he has deployed his lawyers, his solicitors, and want to sue the government for implicit behavior where they have withdrawn the funding from UNRWA. And this is a current one. Then the second one, Kevin, is one of the Home Select Committee chair have openly said that the government is at default for not following international law. So does this international law only apply to certain people and not to others? Or is the word international, I would presume, means everybody?
International law ought to apply to everybody, even those who don't sign up to it. And the way we know that is because if the political will of the big nations is such that they are not in agreement with something that a country or an asymmetric organization has done, then they will normally take action, whether it be by way of imposing sanctions or diplomatic talks and so on, leading on to things like potentially incursions. In the past, we've had regime change, and there are also, the International Criminal Court. Again, it all depends whether people are signed up to the International Criminal Court. Then there's the International Court of Justice. For example, you will know that in the course of the conflict going on currently in Gaza, that the South African government took the state of Israel to the International Court of Justice. And there is an ongoing case in that court right now with some preliminary observations that have been made.
So now, Kevin, I want you to remind our listeners how many countries actually have taken it upon themselves to hold Israel to account on this issue of the ongoing conflict in Gaza.
Well, I suppose you're asking a very difficult question because, I mean, we know that South Africa has gone to the International Court of Justice, okay, the ICJ. We know that there have been a number of states who've been involved in carrying out discussions, sort of third party and intermediate discussions in order to effect a ceasefire or to bring this conflict to an end. So it's impossible to say or point out who has actually made positive steps towards bringing this war to a conclusion. But I think it would be fair to say that most countries in the world and organizations are very uncomfortable with what is going on.
Of course, I'm thinking right now, just messages are streaming along on my screen here, and I shall be going through them, Kevin. So sometimes if I interrupt you, please forgive me for that. Now, one of the cases I seem to remember at Gulf War 1, Gulf War 2, Kevin, do you recall that Cherry Blair, one of the brilliant QCs at the time, and she did not make it to the top. She did not make it to the top because she fell in the midst of what's called cancel culture for what she said. And that was the Prime Minister's wife. So what chance do the rest of you stand if you do not comply and you do not speak the right words and you don't walk straight?
Well, I think this is an interesting question, and I don't really know the answer to it. What I do know is that things have changed over the years, although some people say use the expression plus ça change, uh, things still remain the same. So um, I think that there are opportunities for people of all races and backgrounds in the United Kingdom. And history has shown that people do make it. The difficulty, I think, is always that other people will look and say, well, if you look at percentages, they don't match the demographics. So if there's so many percentage of this type of people, then so many percentage of this type of people should have achieved this or that. And I think that's a more difficult question. I think that we have more openings now. And I think what we need to do is to encourage people of different backgrounds to take these things head on and to push the boundaries, because the boundaries will not push themselves.
Problem is, Kevin, that is very easier said than done, because when you push the boundaries, somebody will come after you, Kevin, and that's what cancel culture is all about. Say
Mhm.
the right things and you'll be okay. Otherwise, right now you have cases, you have solicitors, they are being reprimanded, their governing bodies are being touted to do something about a solicitor who's even put a tweet out. We've had few cases reported to us of that nature, that a solicitor, he tweeted, if you are in favor of the wrong side, you will get punished for that. And fear is a tool of rule right this minute. And this is very, very concerning to the public at large, that they cannot do what they would, they can't say anything.
I understand that. And I think the thing about feeling that you can't say anything um, is just that, because if one person stands up and says something and a million people look and they disagree, then people will disregard that person. And if they think that person is a troublemaker, then they will create a situation for that person, which makes it more difficult. But you see, the way people think is what needs to be addressed. There are different types of people who address different types of problems. Some people want to take their shirt off and get into a fight. Other people want to go into a corner and hide. And then there are those who will think, well, this is a problem. Let me see how many people I can get on my side. Because if I have enough people, we can stand and we can speak with one voice. Speaking with one voice is the important thing. Individualism in a very delicate situation means that that person is putting their neck above the parapet. And if they don't get the support so that they speak with one voice, that's when I think problems occur. Also, you can say the same thing without being, shall I say, overly aggressive. If something is wrong, you can say it's wrong in a soft voice. If something is wrong, you can say it's wrong in a loud voice, but you're saying the same thing.
Well, you're just going to end up across the board in every profession in a good column and a bad column. And this is something which is very, very scary for everybody out there. And you almost are creating a public who have to be following the shepherd and walk in a straight line in the sheep, and you go off track, somebody will come and put you back on track. The shepherd's dog will come back and put you on track or put you away. That's what's happening. So this is a very, very serious concern. It's
But
nothing.
is it really? From one perspective, you may be absolutely right. And I think what it is that creates that sort of situation if we remain with the image of the shepherd, a shepherd's responsibility is to make sure that his sheep remain safe. And if they stray, the shepherd and the people who help the shepherd will try and get the sheep back to take them and to keep them together. But eventually, um, those sheep, if they are livestock, are likely to be slaughtered somewhere along the line.
Now, quite a few messages, too many to go through, Kevin, but I'll do my best to cover as many as I can. And
Yeah.
one question for you is, do you remember Joseph Goebbels?
Not personally.
Of course, you would
I
have
know the
worked
story.
at the
I know
time of
the,
Joseph Goebbels.
I know the story of, yes, Dr. Gomes, yes.
Yeah, now Joseph Goebbels was all those Gen Z and Gen X. You
Mm,
will do your research on Google and you'll learn about Joseph Goebbels. He was a prominent Nazi, and he used to say, always accuse the other side of which you are guilty of. That was his mantra. And it sort of kind of resonates very well in the current climate, Kevin. And I'm reading you the messages that are coming through now. One message is saying, it's never been about humus,
mm,
because of course everybody's spelling it different now for
yeah.
reasons of fear,
Hmm.
or hostages. It's always been about stealing more land. And this is how the sentiments are of this current situation in Gaza. And where are you familiar with a documentary recently, Kevin, by Jeremy Lofredo? Have you
Uh,
seen that
I'm not,
documentary?
I'm not sure if I've seen that documentary. I was going to refer to an article in The Guardian a couple of days ago by Emma Graham Harrison, which is an interesting read.
Yeah,
But
tell us about that. Share that with our listeners.
okay, so I think first of all, if I can comment in terms of the reference made to Goebbels and whatever, I know this is a very, very sensitive area because, of course, what happened during the Nazi war, if I can call it that, was that a lot of people were very, very badly treated. And we have, as a result of that, um, I think, been left with a situation where we now know what genocide is. We now know what war crimes are and how attempts were made to exterminate some people. So when the perpetrators of that sort of policy turn around and say, well, what you just do is blame the other person for what you are doing, you can understand how hypocritical that actually sounds. And I can understand the concerns that a lot of people make because they would be referring to claims made by people responsible for speaking on behalf of the Israeli Defense Force or indeed the Israeli government, who have denied all accusations that have been levied against them about atrocities. So, if one is looking at it from the perspective that um, they have denied, and other people say, well, no, they have done this, then I can see why somebody would make that reference. But one mustn't always light touch paper just because you feel like lighting it, because you don't know whether it's connected to a fuse and what damage that is going to cause later on. It's always, in my judgment and in my experience, it's always better to do the best you can to talk and to bring about a change of mind or mentality in any given difficult situation.
These are beautiful spoken words, Kevin. But I'm reading another message here saying that it's a conflict that was initiated, started by British 75 years ago, and it continues. And 16 years of blockade of Gaza, and the split between the two parties there, where Gaza is the political ruling party, they're democratically elected, was initiated in the first place
Mm.
by the Israeli government. Now, so many things are on the table. For 75 years, it has not resolved. They don't want a one-state solution. They don't want a two-state solution. And what do we do? You
And
know,
nobody wants a no-state solution.
do we bring them all to England and accommodate them in Manchester, Leicester, London, Scotland, and across Britain? Do we absorb 2 million refugees and bring them here? Because we did pretty well with the Ugandan refugees in 1972. We brought 86,750 of them here,
Yeah.
and
But
we
there are
accommodate
also
them.
more people now living in the UK. I'm
Yeah.
not sure we can absorb, or that the people of this country would want to be able to absorb a further 2 million people. But I mean, putting that to one side, I think it is right to look at what has happened. And people do point um, to, if you like, the creation of the state of Israel, yeah, and the circumstances in which that happened. The problem with life in general is that, one must learn from the mistakes of the past. But what has happened has happened. You cannot unchange what has happened. That is a part of the difficulty, because when we are trying to analyze what is going on, we start looking at things like, well, look at what happened 75 years ago. Look at the 16 years blockade. Nobody's helping Gaza. Everybody's supporting Israel. And generally speaking, as a human being and a humanitarian lawyer, that worries me. It worries me because it means that people solidify in their position. It becomes one against the other. And that never ends well. See, and unfortunately, while all this is going on, it is the poor, innocent people that suffer, whether they be the innocent people of Gaza, the women, the children who've been killed, maimed and so on, whether they be the innocent people of Israel, some of whom were killed, and all the things that are supposed to have happened on October 17, whether they be the innocent people of either of the two nations, Palestinian and Israeli nation, over the last 75 years. Because if you look at the roots of these people from a historical basis, or humankind even, we all come from the same root. If the creation story is correct, there was Adam and Eve, and thereafter the world became what it became. Wherever people went, humankind came from the same root. We should not be fighting one another.
So we know that when the initiation in 47, 48, long
Mhm.
before my time, the initiation of the State of Israel, it was said at that time by Lord Balfour on the, you can see these papers currently, nothing shall be done which shall prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing of non-Jewish communities in Palestine. Now,
Yes.
just that statement, which is a point of fact and
Mm.
condition, is not
Mhm.
is never been adhered to, because all we've seen is situation where I'm asking you a question now: do the citizens of Gaza have a right to exist in their own land?
Well, clearly they do, because if they didn't, we wouldn't be having this conversation, and millions of people around the world won't be arguing or discussing or disputing what is going on in that region right now.
So,
They
are the
have,
governments of the world, are they complicit to all the crimes in this 75-year-old conflict? I mean, how many governments do you go and sue? If I commit a murder with a weapon, and the law will also go after the person who supplied me the weapon.
not
So
necessarily,
where does the law
not,
stand on this? The
not
supplier of
necessarily.
weapons who is committing mass destruction of human beings.
Well,
What is the position of that, Kevin?
I just want to clarify, because technically speaking, it is not illegal to make weapons. So it is not illegal to make weapons or to sell weapons. So if somebody supplies another person with a weapon, provided that person is entitled to have those weapons, it's not a criminal offense. But I understand what you're saying. So let's take it beyond that personal level into the level of, let us say, the provision of weapons by a government, yeah, to another government. The question is, how does it become aiding and abetting what you would call a war crime? First of all, it has to be established that war crimes have taken place. First of all, secondly, it has to be established that those war crimes are committed, if you like, by the state that is committing, as opposed to individuals or command groups, that sort of thing. It has to go as a policy. Then, what the International Convention on Aiding and Abetting effectively says is, in order to be aiding and abetting, you have to know that the act that you are doing would assist or have the substantial likelihood of assisting in the commission of the predicate offense, of the offense that we're talking about. It's interesting because in general terms, with the when you are looking at individuals and you're looking at how people can be complicit in assisting someone to carry out an offense, they must also share the same intention. Okay? Now, generally speaking, people who work sort of in the area of international human rights and war crimes law will say that in this specific area, there is no requirement, yeah, for the person who is doing that act that we're talking about to have the same uh, desires or the wish for the same outcome as the person who is committing the offense or the state that is committing the offense. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. Now, the question is, throughout history, Kevin,
Mm.
try to recall how many countries or continents were born out of genocide. Quickly.
Um, I think quite a number.
So,
um,
this is the state of empire building. You go across the world and you decimate the indigenous population and you take over the country and you call it your own. Now, you can see that this pattern is now continuing once more. Now, the genocide, there were quite a few genocides. Kevin, one of the listeners has sent me a message here saying that genocide happened in Armenia. The perpetrators at that time were the Turkish nation, so they can say little about genocide, Armenia. Now, the rest of the genocides listed here are Rwanda, Bosnia, and you have now here Palestine in Gaza. Plausible genocide is what the correct wording is. So this is an inherent pattern to all empire countries or ruling countries who think nothing of it. While you are taking time to resolve the ICJ issues, there are 32,000 dead
yeah.
and maybe 10,000 buried under the rubble. We have the latest state-of-the-art diggers, equipment going off to build a port, and we have doing nothing at all about feeding these people. Starvation is a tool of war as well. Just makes
Yeah.
no sense to the normal human being. Is it more important to send a digger out there to build a port, or is it more important to make sure that people don't die of starvation? If you can't kill them with a F-35, with a tank, you can't blow them up with the latest drone technology, then you will
Let's
starve them to death.
let's pause for a moment there. I mean, I understand. Um, that when one looks at it from the international perspective, starving the civilian population is not something that normally people would be able to get away with. It is not considered to be anything other than a crime against humanity. Okay, it would fall within the definition. I make no judgment or analysis of actually what is happening on the ground because I don't have first-hand knowledge. I see like what everybody else sees, the news, the pictures, it is abhorrent that people should be starving to death because they can't get food to eat, that their homes are being bombed and they have to move and all this sort of thing. I mean, that's abhorrent. But you asked the question about should they be getting food to them? Stop this, the starvation, the ongoing starvation, the famine getting worse, instead of building ports. My understanding is that the port that they're trying to build is so that they can get more food in more quickly. That's the coalition of nations, what they're trying to do, because the entrance to Gaza from any point is difficult because the one is coming through Israel, and that's difficult because Israel is stated that it is at war with Gaza, so it's making things difficult, and presumably it believes as a state that it has to do that in order to carry out its objectives, whether you agree with those objectives or whether you agree with that reasoning. And the other coming through Egypt is also controlled effectively by the same people who are waging a war. The sad thing from the perspective of the civilians, from the perspective of the world in general, because anybody who is a human being and looking at what's going on must be very concerned at the very high number of civilian casualties. And the million-dollar question is, must so many women and children, people who are not actively involved in a military action, have to suffer with their lives and health as a result of what is going on?
Well, of course, it's terrifying when you see so many videos every day that the documentary that Jeremy had made with his colleagues, and the public at large was saying, kill them all. Kill all the children because tomorrow they'll be our enemies. Kill the women so they don't be able to born any more children. It's terrifying. There's no talk of any buffer military from parts of the world. Does United Nations resolutions have any meaning today, Kevin? I want to know. How many resolutions have been flouted over the years, over the last 75 years?
Well, the United Nations is a body that encompasses the majority of the nations of the world that are recognized as nations. It has a unique setup because the way in which it was created allows, is it 7 or 8 nations to basically control what happens. Because if one of them says, we're not doing this, that it's stopped. Yeah. So the right of veto. And what I think you could say about the United Nations is it is one of the greatest schools for diplomacy, because being able to speak across the level to so many people from different backgrounds, different countries, and reach some sort of consensus is an art form in itself. And maybe you would understand why it is difficult for the United Nations to make a specific agreement in relation to any very potentially volatile situation, because there will always be those within who want something to happen in this way and those who want something to happen in that way, and a lot of people in between. So there is a valuable purpose for the international community, by the United Nations, and that is to allow dialogue and sufficient dialogue to take place, that the kind of conflicts we are seeing today do not happen. But
So
obviously, they haven't been
we gotta
successful.
we gotta move on now, Kevin, because time is short. You got eight
Yeah,
minutes left.
all right.
Ethnic cleansing, is that
Not
a good
permitted.
idea?
Not permitted. Nobody should ever support ethnic cleansing.
So the many proposals flying around to say that they're making plans for Gaza, as they want what they want to make there, some condominiums, some beach resort. Already they're making these plans. So where are they looking to send all of these Palestinians who from their homeland? I came to your house, I threw you out, and I took it over. Kevin, would you be happy with that?
No, I don't think, I dare say there are not many people who would be happy with being thrown out of their house and, having to watch from down the street as somebody else moves in and turns it into theirs.
In
Um,
fact, better than that, I take you out of your house, I bomb your house, and then I ethnic cleanse you. That would be even worse, wouldn't it?
I think, you see, I think you get to a level where worse is just a term of art. Once you have reached a level where people are dying because of indiscriminate actions, when you get to a level where, a what is going on appears to be on a systemic front, um, for a purpose that people are complaining involves ethnic cleansing, i.e., to try and get rid of a whole people, then that cannot be right.
Of course,
And this is why I think that, you know, whilst it's easy to say, you see, we descend into this thing and you lump the Israelis into one sort of side, and the Palestinians into the other, and then you have the British, the Americans, the French, the Russians, and they're all wherever they are. But let us not forget, what Israel is doing is not necessarily what the people of Israel wanted to do. It is a political and military strategy that has been decided by those in power in Israel. What Hamas did is not necessarily what the people of Palestine wanted to do on October the 17th. It was a political and military strategy that was brought about by those who led that faction. So if we think about it from that perspective, it makes it more difficult for us to say, well, all Israelis are like this, all Palestinians are like that, and neither side should be ethnically cleansed. You know,
of
people
course,
have a right to life.
you can see the danger here going forward. Today it's Palestine, tomorrow it'll be Lebanon, then it will be Syria, then it will be Jordan, and it goes on and on and on. Now,
Well, there are
historically,
those,
recently, in the last 15 years, Kevin,
yeah,
you've seen Saddam decimated because of his actions against the Kurdish in Fallujah. Then you've seen Gaddafi decimated.
yeah.
Now, both cases, our government was complicit in that. Tony Blair took us to war and killed 1 million people. And what does he get as a gift? He becomes a super knight, and he also gets a wonderful job as a Middle East envoy, which absolutely, one of the
Okay.
messages I'm reading here makes absolutely no sense,
Yeah.
because how can somebody not be held to account? Which lawyer, which barrister in the world, which court in the world has held him to account for that? And
So, you see, that is comment, and generally speaking, comment. Anybody can comment about anything when you're in a position. As one of the things I said when we started out, in parliament or the leader of a country and so on, everything you do is open to scrutiny by people with different interests. There are those who obviously believed that he deserved to be made a Middle East envoy. There are those who believe, as the sender of that message, that he should go nowhere near the Middle East because of all the stuff that went on and because of the way in which the United Kingdom was brought into a war that many would argue was none of our business. Yeah. But let's stop for a moment and think, because the logical argument from that contributor is that effectively, if what is going on in Israel is so wrong, and international coalitions can take out dictators, why don't they take out the dictator in Israel? And you see, that is the danger of going along those lines, because each state must work according to their principles, and indeed trying to achieve regime change by going in forcefully. If we say that was wrong in Iraq, if we say that was wrong in Libya, then surely it must be wrong in Israel.
Of course, that is goes without saying. This is the sentiment of the public, right? Across the world, Kevin, you have France, you have UK, you have USA, who are happily sending people out there to go and fight, whether they are military or they're individuals, the public. Human rights across the globe are amplifying the voices of all the people in the world, Kevin.
Yeah.
But where is the democracy if majority of people are saying no to this atrocity, whereas in our government we have 650 MPs, 17,000 councillors across the country? How many percentage, Kevin, have actually stood up to say never again means never again?
Yes, but what does never again mean?
Never again for any atrocity of this nature to happen anywhere in the world. That's what it means.
I agree, but the question is, and this is the difficult question that all the authorities, the different countries that are involved face: how do you stop what is happening? How do you actually make never again a reality?
Well, first of all, I'm following on the message here. A solution is you have a balance of power, which means both parties have the same weaponry. There's no war. That's number one solution. Second solution is apply the basic fundamental laws of humanity and spirituality across all major monotheistic religions of the world, where killing is a sin. And you live to that mantra.
Well, I'm sure that there are many people who want to live to that mantra. I mean, let me just ask this question, because I don't know what the answer to it is. I think before all of this happened, if I was following the news correctly, the Israeli Prime Minister or President, I forget now his name, his role was probably looking at having elections. And I think the news is that if there had been elections, it's likely that he may not have, kept his seat or kept his position. And I wonder, if there were to be elections in Israel tomorrow, and the people of Israel were allowed to vote, I wonder how they would vote. You know the reason I'm asking this question? Because some of the problems that we're talking about here.
Kevin, I must stop you there now, and we must continue this conversation in another follow-on program to this. So if you'd like to say goodbye to all our listeners.
Thank you very much for listening to me today. I hope you have a wonderful day. For those who are Christians, happy Easter. For
Great.
those
Jazakallah